Have you ever had bad sex with a guy? Isn't it especially frustrating when every other aspect of your relationship has been going perfect with him, and when you finally do it, the sex is trash? Well, what if I told you I can help you avoid that tragedy by pointing out to you every aspect of sex you've been missing or neglecting in your life? So if you want to change your sex life forever, join me on today's show where we'll be discussing how to have sex with men and enjoy it. That way you never have another awkward and embarrassing sexual encounter with a man that will leave you dry as a desert ever again. Our first point is about the buildup. Now, why is it so important to make sure there's a proper buildup before you actually get to the act of having sex? I'll explain to you why. Here we have a graph. Now, don't get worried. This isn't going to be a lot of math and numbers here. I just want you to visualize this to understand it better. See, let's go to the bad sex graph here. You see, in the bad sex graph, you start off right from the beginning, meaning like the first night, the first date, having minimal to average tension going on in this graph. And as time goes on, you don't really let time pass. So you hop right into sleeping together right from the very beginning. And right from that time, the tension literally dwindles off of a cliff very quickly. In fact, most of the time when you're doing it on the first night, I shouldn't have even drawn the graph like this. I should draw the graph like that because it disappears after just about a week when you do all of this in that very first night. And why does this happen? See, at the beginning of a relationship, a situationship, and anything, you don't really know someone well enough to really understand and connect with them. Now, you might feel feelings of infatuation, you might be really physically attracted to that person, but there is no real connection there. The problem with that, though, is you'll only realize that probably about halfway through, or when you're just about finished having sex with that guy. And you'll realize that without that real connection, the real experience of going through things with him, of feeling safe with him, which we're going to talk about later in the show, all of the experience and the luster and emotion and the passion that's supposed to be there for you when you're experiencing good sex will not be there. And you'll feel a little bit of an emptiness and a void within you, where even if the sex was good, you'll feel like something is missing. And this is the problem with not allowing things to build up over time. See, when you build that tension and you build that desire, you're also building yourself up and you're building him up for that big explosion. Let me explain something to you as it relates to good sex. See, good sex, right, doesn't necessarily always have to start off really amazing from the very beginning. It can even start off slow, really low in terms of the amount of tension going on between the two of you. And as time goes on, gradually, it builds and builds and builds to the point where there's an actual explosion because both of you are so primed and so ready for this experience. But you want to know what's great about that is you can have the same kind of sex. You can have the same sexual chemistry and compatibility. But because you've allowed things to build up for such a long time, all of a sudden it feels like a bigger experience. It feels like a larger experience, and that's what you want. Our second point is about pleasuring yourself. Now, let me explain this to you in an analogy so that you can properly understand why I want you to pleasure yourself. Let's say, for the sake of example, I came to you and I said, hey, I'm going out to get some ice cream. And what ice cream do you want? Because I want to get you your favorite flavor. Tell me which one is your favorite. However, let's also say in this hypothetical example, you've never had ice cream before in your entire life. And so you're going to attempt to pick from chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, mint, banana, mango, and figure out how you're going to explain to me which ice cream you think is best without ever having tried any of these different flavors to know which one you actually enjoy. How impossible to difficult would that be to pick one that's your favorite when you don't even know what your favorites are because you haven't experienced any of them? This is the same thing with your relationships and with men. If you do not pleasure yourself, you will not know what you like and what you enjoy. Subsequently, it'll become very difficult to explain to a man what you like and what you enjoy because you don't even have that understanding yourself. One of the easiest mistakes you're going to make with sex and your pleasure and enjoyment during sex is assuming that a man is just going to come into your life and be able to give you all of your sexual answers. and know exactly what you want, exactly how you want it, without you even knowing that for yourself first. You have to understand men are human beings. They cannot read your mind, nor should you expect them to read your mind. If you want pleasure, you have to understand how to communicate that. And the very first step is understanding, what do I even find pleasurable? You're going to have to do some work, and I'm going to get graphic here. You're going to have to watch some videos if you need to spark your mental and your interest to figure out what piques your interest. You're going to have to start touching yourself. You're going to have to start fantasizing about things, which we're going to talk about fantasy in a little bit. And I want your mind to start working. You have to experience you. What do you like to do? What do you find interesting? If you find yourself, let's just say for the sake of example, you're at the gym and you see a trainer training this woman real close, like they getting real close. He's hugging up on her hips. He's doing some things to her. He's talking in her ear, and you're just like, damn, that's kind of hot. I want you to work with that. Ask yourself a question. Why do I see that and feel like that's hot? I go to the gym all the time. Do I want a man's hands on my body? Do I want some sort of experience with a trainer? If that's the case, why do I want an experience with a trainer? Is it that I find it hot to be in the gym? Is it that I find it hot to be all sweaty? Do I like the tension? I want you to start asking yourself these questions, and then I want you to start pleasuring yourself to these fantasies and scenarios that you're going to create in your mind. As you keep exploring and keep exploring, you're going to figure out what spots are the best for you. You're going to figure out what rhythms are the best for you. You're going to figure out what thoughts and fantasies are the best for you. All of this will help you understand how to pleasure yourself, that when you meet this man and you build a relationship with him, now that it gets to actually communicating your sexual wants and desires, you're not just expecting him to read your mind or come up with answers that you never had yourself. Point number 3 is about speaking up for yourself. Now, why is this so important from the very beginning, even before you have sex with him? Because very easily, you can adopt the mindset as a woman where I am here to please this man. Because if I don't please this man, both emotionally, spiritually, sexually, all of that good stuff, that he will leave me or not want to be with me anymore or go find another woman. But the problem with that mindset is that when you approach your relationship, especially the sexual part of your relationship, you'll copy and paste that same approach to your sex life. Meaning, you'll start to adopt this mentality that sex is about pleasing him. And when you please him, he orgasms. When he orgasms, he's happy, and then the cycle continues over and over again. But the problem with this is as you continue down this cycle, eventually you'll realize that what's also happening as you're pleasing him is you're not pleased. And as you're not pleased, right, and this circle continues, he orgasms, but you don't. Once you start in this cycle, and you're going through this over and over and over again. See, you might start off thinking, well, it's not that big a deal. I don't have to worry about anything. But very quickly, this can become a very unsustainable way to live, where every time you have sex with him, it's only about his pleasure. You don't have any pleasure, and you get left unsatisfied and unhappy. Now, this is going to snowball in a direction where the more you establish this dynamic, it will get set in stone. The more unhappy you will be, and the more frustrated you'll be with the existence of your relationship, to the point where you'll find yourself saying, I don't even want to start this process because this cycle will continue over and over again. So why do I want you to speak up before you even start sleeping with him? Because I want part of your communication to not just be about, hey, how do I do more for you to make you feel better in this relationship and you feel sexually satisfied? I want you right from the beginning, okay? I'm not saying you got to talk about this on the first night, but when you guys start hopping into the sexual side of your relationship, I want you to also speak up for yourself on the things that make you happy, on the things that please you, on the things that make you orgasm, on the things that you desire and want for yourself in a sexual relationship. I know it's a little bit taboo because a lot of people will tell you that as a woman, you've got to be pristine and clean and never have any desires outside of just sitting and laying in starfish and vanilla missionary sleeping with a man, okay? That's not necessarily what you have to do, especially if that doesn't satisfy you. You have to be honest about what satisfies you in order to eventually get that. Part of that understanding is figuring out, hey, Are we compatible here? Does this work here? Do you like the same things that I like? And also, are you willing to do the things that I like? Point number 4 is about testing the waters. Now, why is it so important to test the waters before you dive headfirst into the deep end? Because we want to make sure that before anything goes too far, you and this guy are sexually compatible. Now, how does this work in actuality, and why do I want this to work this way? See, this is the thing that you have to realize about human beings. We're all a little bit different. We all have our little bit of quirks and personality traits that make us unique in our own specific way. When you meet a man, it's very important to understand what is he into. And ask yourself a very important question: what are you into? And figure out if you two are even sexually compatible in the first place. Let me explain this and how this works. Let's say, for example, a guy who's into rough play, like really rough sex, right? And really public sex as well, public stuff. He likes to play around with rope and tie you up, and he also likes degrading type of dirty talk, all right? This is his style of having sex. This is what gives him the most pleasure. This is what he finds the most desirable and interesting. Now for you, let's say for the sake of example, you are a sensual type of girly. You like to be called baby girl when you're in bed with a guy. You like it to be very private and very intimate, candlelight, things like that. And you like a whole lot of eye contact, skin to skin contact. You guys are feeling each other's heartbeat on each other's chest, okay? That's your vibe. Now, here's the thing though. If you start to realize, remember, I told you to pleasure yourself in our earlier point because I want you to start to understand and be self-aware of what works for you and what you like to do the most. If you know and you understand these particular things about yourself and the type of sex you enjoy having, and in discussion with him, you learn that he's really into a very different type of sex than you're at all comfortable with or at all find pleasurable, then you need to be honest with yourself that you're probably wasting a lot of your time by exploring a relationship with this guy when it's clear that you two aren't sexually compatible. Now, I'm not saying that every man you meet, you have to be perfectly aligned with everything that he wants is everything that you want, and all of that is perfectly the same. But what should be happening is there should be, even though you guys have your own individual things, there should be some sort of crossover here, right? There should be at least a few things that the both of you both like. In fact, there should be quite a few things that for both of you, these type of actions, this type of things that you guys do in bed will work for the both of you. The reason that I'm saying this and I'm emphasizing this is because sexual compatibility is such a big part of you ever having sexual pleasure in the bedroom. If you and this man are not sexually compatible, then everything you do to please him will be just for his pleasure. And you'll always be fighting back and forth with him between let's do something for your pleasure or let's do something for my pleasure. And you'll never find a happy medium where you guys can both do something for both of your pleasure simultaneously. You'll start to feel like you're fighting a battle of wills of who's gonna get pleasure this time and who's gonna have to suffer this time. And it's gonna create a cycle where sex becomes a battle against each other instead of a pleasurable experience that you can both give each other. Point number 5 is about dirty talk. Now we're gonna get graphic on this point, and you can see I've kind of broken down your anatomy to explain this to you. Now, the reason I'm separating the head from the body is because I want you to understand the importance dirty talk will play in your sexual relationship with a man and your pleasure. See, you might think to yourself, well, Tomisin, I'm one of those girls that I don't really like being verbal in the bed. I don't like talking a lot. I like to keep it a little bit more silent. Dirty talk is not really my style. It is your style as a woman. I'm going to explain to you why you probably didn't even realize that. See, you have to understand, you experience sex very differently from men. But the problem is you've probably been getting a lot of your understanding of how sex should be experienced from men and their own experience. Let me explain this. See, you might think to yourself, oh, I'm going to get the wettest, right? My nipples are going to be hard and I'm going to be tingling for men who I find attractive, right? So if he's got a six-pack, he's tall, he's good looking, got a nice smile, got nice dark skin, chocolatey skin, and he's got muscles, I'll be attracted to him, I'll be turned on by him. Yes, but actually no. Because for you, the actual way you get turned on, the actual way you orgasm, the actual way you go over the moon is with your mental. is with your mind. And when your mind is in the right place, when your mind and your mental is stimulated in your sexual relationship, that's when this will be flooded. That's when your nipples will be hard as a rock, your fingers will be tingling, and your legs will be shaking. But you have to understand, why is this way for you as a woman? See, your experience with sex is completely different. Yes, it is physical, but it's a lot more spiritual for you. It's a lot more of a vulnerable time for you. It's a lot more of an experience of receiving someone into you, where you're actually giving something to that person because of the way your anatomy works and because of who you are as a woman, okay? Now, the reason that I say this is because we need to understand, now that we know how important your mental is, we need to factor in how dirty talk is going to play a role in your sexual experiences, because dirty talk is going to speak directly to your mental. And you have to ask yourself a question, do some exploring and do some pleasuring of yourself to ask yourself, not only how do I like to be pleased physically, but how do I like to be talked to in bed? Now, the reason that I put all of these different points here, these different words that could be said to you here, is because these are different ways that guys can speak to you that would be versions of dirty talk that might work differently depending on who you are as an individual, right? I put baby girl down here, I put SLUT here, daddy's girl, princess, and there's so much more that we could go into that are even more degrading than this and even more sweet than this, okay? Now, the reason that I say this though is you have to get a grip and an understanding of which one of these, or what one of these sayings or phrases or things is gonna be your trigger. And trust me, you might be thinking, well, Tomisin, I'm vanilla. Well, Tomisin, I don't do stuff like this. Well, Tomisin, this is not my cup of tea. I don't have a trigger. You do. But you have to do enough exploring to figure out what that trigger is. And I promise you, when you find that trigger, it'll be your mental stimulation that you're going to use to unlock all of this. I don't ever want you to think from the rest of the time you live until you die. I don't ever want you to think after you watch this video that your experience and your pleasure during sex actually comes from here. It doesn't. Your experience during sex comes all from here. And when this is properly stimulated, all of this works properly. So we need to be figuring out, how do we address this part as it relates to dirty talk? And this is where having conversations and communication with your man is very important. Because if you don't know which one of these is your trigger, you're probably just going to have to experiment, and you're going to have to try some things in bed with this guy to figure out which one is your trigger. And trust me, I'm telling you this with experience. When you find that trigger, you will know that that's your trigger. It will feel like a light bulb just went off in your head, because when he says it to you during the moment and you're actually turned on, you'll be like, oh, something just happened. It did that. You say that again. Say that again. You just did something there. And what you'll realize is, and this is going to sound very, very strange to you, you can actually be stimulated to have an orgasm if he says that trigger in the right way, in the right circumstance. Because when your mental is stimulated and a guy is speaking directly to that mental trigger of yours that stimulates you, it actually is what allows this part of your body to work properly. I know for some of you, it probably sounds really strange and really stupid, but I promise you, once you get this activated, a whole new world will open up for you. Point number 6 is about fantasies. Now, why are fantasies so important? Because they are a compilation of all of the experiences you've had in your life about your job, your childhood, your family dynamics, your family relationships, your friendships, everything that you experience in your life will create what is essentially like a fingerprint for you in terms of the things that you're fascinated and interested by and you fantasize about. Now, when you get to this fantasy portion, I want you to, first of all, do some digging to figure out what that fantasy is. But after you do digging and you discover what those fantasies are, you need to have a conversation with your man in order to explain to him, hey, you know, I find myself fantasizing a lot about this. And I think it's probably because I've always had a desire to do this or try this, or I just find it hot for whatever reason. Maybe because I work there, maybe because I always do this thing, whatever the case may be. And the reason that you have to explain this and talk about this with your man is because you want this man to try his best to fulfill that desire or fantasy. It doesn't necessarily have to be one-to-one, but then if you guys can role play this, if you guys can talk about it more, if you guys can explore it more, this is another way that your mind can be stimulated, because remember how important mental is, like we talked about in our last point. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Remember how I talked about, let's say you have a gym fantasy of having a trainer go to the gym and train you. Now, let's say you discuss this and you're like, oh, I've been having this fantasy that, I sleeping with the trainer type of thing. It's really hot to me. And I just think it'd be so hot to be in a situation where there's tension and you got a trainer and this and that. So I was thinking, right? And this is where you kind of apply it here. And then I was thinking maybe we just start going to the gym together and see how that feels, right? Or he might hear that and say, okay, why don't we start working together at the gym? Why don't I start actually going to one day a week? I actually train you at the gym and we actually play it out. We don't necessarily have to actually have sex in the gym, but why don't we actually try me training you and see how it feels? Like I'll actually help you squat. I'll go down with you and I'll grab your hips and things like that. I'll go through all the motions with you and we'll see how it goes. This is a way, even though you're not necessarily having sex at that gym, but this is a perfect way to stimulate your mind and to stimulate the fantasy that you're having. Because two things will be happening simultaneously. One, you'll be getting this desire met, which will also subdue the desire in terms of projecting it onto someone else. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about going to the gym and seeing a particular trainer training a woman and then fantasizing about being with that trainer because he's the only one you see at that gym. Now you can project that fantasy onto your man instead of some random trainer. Number two, it will also allow you to get pleasure from this situation, get your mind stimulated, and then when you guys go to actually have sex, you guys can dirty talk about it. You guys can rewind and replay it and say, remember when I was at the gym grabbing on your hips, and he can build out this whole fantasy for you. And remember how I was feeling on you and you were going down and things like that. And you can refer to him as your trainer. And I know for some of you, as you're hearing this, you're like, Tomisin, this is so silly. This is so stupid. But I promise you, like I said earlier, when your mind is stimulated and when it's in the way that actually you find attractive and intense and passionate, I'm telling you, something will happen to your body that you never even thought possible. And things will start flowing and working and be lubricated in ways that you never even imagined. Point number 7 is about direction. Now, some of you aren't going to like this point. Now, I'm going to explain to you why. See, this is the thing that you have to come to terms with and come to grips with. Most men do not understand your anatomy. They don't understand how your body works. They don't understand how to stimulate you. They don't understand how to pleasure you. So the reality of it is you're going to have to help them and guide them in helping to properly pleasure you. The other thing you have to realize is that's okay that some men will not necessarily be good and perfect at pleasuring you right from the jump. But that doesn't mean that a lot of those men still won't be enthusiastic about actually pleasuring you, okay? Let me explain what I mean by that. So you have to understand during sex, it's a very adjustment-based process. We really have to be focused on the details and making adjustments in order to get to our desired goal. Let's think of this as a bullseye, right? You have to understand that the men are shooting at a bullseye blindfolded for the most part. They don't really understand how to give you pleasure. So you really have to help them and guide them every time they shoot at this bullseye. Let them know, okay, you're at the far right. Make it a little bit down and a little bit to the left, right? They might overshoot. Okay, you're here now. Now take it down a couple of notches. Now they're over here now. And you might say, okay, wait, you're way off. Now go back to the right a bit. Okay, you're over here now, right? And you have to be guiding them in understanding, all right, as I give you feedback, as I guide you, we're always trying to get closer and closer to this goal of eventually hitting the bullseye. But you have to adopt the mindset that I'm going to guide you and help you understand what pleasure is for me, how to give it to me, and help you make adjustments so that you can actually do that properly. Because you don't win by not speaking up for yourself. You also don't win by not directing him because you just want him to magically already know how to give you pleasure. Let me give you an even more detailed understanding of what I mean by that. Men, they don't understand This is one of the common misconceptions by a lot of men. I'm telling you, this is a man. They think when you say right there, right? Like you're hitting the spot. They think that that means they should go harder and faster. Because when you tell them right there, I'm about to come, they think I should now go really crazy and really hard because somehow in their mind, they think that that's going to make you come harder. I know that that's not true, but a lot of men don't understand that concept. So you have to do some directing and explaining, right, in your conversations with him that, hey, right there, do the exact same thing. Don't change anything. Same speed, same pressure, same motion, right? That way he understands, okay, you're about to come, but that doesn't mean get super excited that I change anything and I miss the bullseye, right? I shoot over here or shoot over here, right? It's all about guiding. Even for example, when he's eating you out, you have to understand how to say, okay, put your tongue right here. No, not over here on my lips, not over here on my inner thigh, okay? Put your tongue right there. Now, do a little bit of a sucking motions, okay? You're gonna have to guide. You're gonna have to direct. A lot of men, they do have a desire to pleasure you. They just don't understand how. And if you adopt the mindset that you're not gonna help to guide him there to that destination, then you'll end up pleasureless. Point number 8 is about good boy. Why? Because your man is very similar to a dog, and I want you to treat him kind of like a dog as it relates to sex, okay? Now, I know this isn't the perfect drawing of a dog. I don't want to see any comments about my dog. Now, I want you to understand this concept about dogs to help you understand why I want you doing this with your man. See, when you're a dog, you're trying to train your dog, let's say. You want your dog to act like a good boy. The way you get your dog to act like a good boy is by helping your dog make connections. Your dog likes treats. Your dog really enjoys treats. You know that your dog likes treats, and your dog knows that he likes treats. So what ends up happening is when your dog is a good boy, you give him treats. Over the course of time, your dog starts to understand this psychological connection between doing certain things and receiving treats. So he understands if I want treats, I do these particular actions or things the way that my owner wants me to, and then I get rewarded with the thing that I want. Vice versa for your man, or I should say related or in connection with your man, what I want you to do is the same concept. You have to make sure during the act of sex, when your man is actually doing the thing, when he's hitting the spot, when he's giving you your orgasm, this is an easy mistake to make. When you're actually feeling like, oh, this is the spot, this is the rhythm, this is the stroke, this is the whatever, I want you to be vocal about the fact that, hey, you're doing a great job right there. Oh, this is perfect. Oh my gosh, you touch my body so good. No one's ever touched my body like this, right? Even if you have to over exaggerate it, the reason I say this is because this is a man's version of a dog treat. And when you can even emphasize that, hey, this is the motion, this is the action, this is the position that I like, this is exactly what I want, and you can emphasize that moment for him by making it clear how much you're enjoying this, by making it clear how well he's doing, and giving him his good boy treats. Now he also makes a connection between, all right, now my muscle memory is in a place where I know if I want to pleasure my woman, I do exactly this. And every time you emphasize that over and over again, you're helping him build that connection and make it stronger and stronger. This is the motion, this is the stroke, this is the position, this is the talk, this is the whatever. And he's learning over the course of time. He's learning and understanding your body. He's learning and understanding your mind. He's learning and understanding what works for you. And you're helping him by cluing him into, this is really working for me. A lot of you might make the mistake of not being so vocal at that time, not being so clear with emphasis at that time with your body language, but also with your words of affirmation, that you don't realize you're not actually giving your man a dog treat. So it's very difficult for him to make that psychological connection between this is what I should be doing to give her pleasure, and anything else is not really giving her the same amount of pleasure. Point number 9 is about aftercare. Now, some of you may not have heard this terminology before, but I'm going to explain to you why it's so important for your pleasure, even sexually. See, you in the process of sleeping with a man are experiencing something very, very spiritual and emotional. See, because you're allowing a man literally inside you, you're also spiritually and psychologically and emotionally allowing a man inside of you. It's one of the most vulnerable state you can be in with any other human being. So after you guys do the deed, so to speak, and you guys are laying in that bed, you're going to feel this innate feeling like, I just gave you something of mine. You were intimate with me, and I shared a very close part of myself with you that's now laying across me. There will also simultaneously at that point be a desire for you to feel very safe with that person, that man that you just gave this really important piece of yourself to. You're naturally going to have that feeling. Now, the problem with this is if you don't emphasize how important this process of sex is, this aftercare is, a lot of guys will neglect this because they're not experiencing sex the same way as you. Then during this time, they'll go start playing video games, they'll start, texting, they'll start scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or whatever the case may be. And you won't feel like you and this man have a strong connection. You also won't feel like this is your safe person. And you'll feel like you just gave him something that he doesn't really care about, doesn't really cherish, or doesn't think is very important. The problem with this, though, is if you feel like you gave him something and there is no strong connection, you're going to feel what we call in the Players Club, you're going to feel very poopy about yourself, you're going to feel very poopy about this relationship, and you're going to feel very poopy about this man that you gave something so important to you to. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing aftercare and why this is important, remember how I talked about the mind and your stimulation in order for you to orgasm, come, and have a good time? See, sex is more than just the experience of actual intercourse. It's the entire experience from the beginning, when you're flirting and there's tension and there's foreplay, to the actual act of doing it and actually him penetrating himself inside of you, to after the fact when both of you orgasm, hopefully both of you are orgasming, and then you guys are left to your devices to just kind of ponder on what just happened. The easiest way to ruin the entire experience for you, even if the first 2/3 were amazing, is to have the aftercare not go right and for you to feel poopy because now that you've actually done the deed, maybe he's degraded you, maybe you guys did some things, you did some public stuff, you did some private stuff, he sucked your toes, whatever the case may be. After this, and after you do all this with him, if you don't feel safe, it's going to ruin the entire experience for you because you're going to start to have a lot of anxiety and a lot of these weird emotions be riled up in you that make you very uncomfortable, that are attached directly to sex and the aftermath of sex. What's going to happen over time is psychologically, you're going to start to associate those negative feelings and emotions with sex, which is going to actually start to deter you from wanting to have sex over again because you know after you have sex, you're going to have those same negative feelings or emotions. I don't want that for you because how important is your mind? It's so important that if you on an ongoing basis attach negative feelings towards sex and you start to feel uncomfortable at the idea of having it, you'll get to a place where even when you're having it and you're supposed to be enjoying it, you won't because you start to feel the anxiety bubbling up before it even gets there. You feel uncomfortable because you know what's coming afterwards, which is all of these negative emotions. And it's going to play tricks on your mind and force you to not be able to actually enjoy the entire act. So point number 10 is about the post game. Now, you know how you have Sports Center and you have these post game broadcasters that'll be talking about the highlights and the lowlights of the last game and the storyline of the last game? I want you to adopt the same mentality in your relationship and in your sexual relationships to have post-game conferences every time you have sex. What do I mean by a post-game conference? You see, both teams and media have post-game kind of analysis of any game that they'll play. Why? Because it helps the fans and the players understand what was done well and what was done wrong and what needs to be adjusted so that things go better in the future. I want that same goal to be the reason that you have post-game conferences for your sexual experiences with men. because you have to be able to break down these type of things. Let's say, for example, the last time you had sex with a guy, there were some good things and some bad things, i.e., the kissing was really good, lots of tongue, just the right amount of lubrication, not too much spit, not so dry, really nice. But on the bad side, the way that he fingered you, he was DJing a little bit too hard, too much pressure. It didn't really turn you on. In fact, it was making you a little bit dry, right? Now, we can say, okay, the dirty talk was really good. That was working for me. You called me baby girl. You called me princess. You called me mama. I really liked that. That was really doing something for me, whatever the case may be. It could also be, oh, well, you tried the nipple biting thing because I know we were trying to do a little bit of a hardcore thing, but that just kind of hurt more than I enjoyed it, and I don't think we should. Yeah, that wasn't my cup of tea, right? Hair pull, the position, right? So you get my drift in analyzing what was working and what was not. Now, obviously, when you're analyzing this, you don't want to beat men down. You want to kind of gentle parent this and say, yes, this was really working. Emphasize, you did such a good job when you did this and you did that and you did that. Now, the parts that are obviously bad, that didn't work for you, you want to help guide them to say, yeah, that one I didn't like as much. That one I wasn't feeling so much. I feel like maybe we might have to try something different, or maybe next time we just don't do that one. I wasn't really as into that one as I was all of these other good things that you do, right? You do a little bit of gentle parenting, but it's very important that you guys have a post-game analysis on both parts, of course, because you also want him to be enjoying his time with you, but we're also definitely focusing on your pleasure. So having that conversation, especially when it's a post-game, where it can be outside the bedroom and you guys can kind of be in a place where it's less awkward to have the discussion in the moment, it's good for both of you to kind of have clear heads and to be able to really receive this information in a way that feels less offensive to either one of you. Okay? Because the worst thing that you can do is to not talk about this ever, and then to have a really uncomfortable situation in the middle of having sex where you're just like, yeah, please stop. Like, this is really not working, right? I don't want you to have that scenario happen, because what should be happening is way before you get to such an awkward place where both of you are on completely different pages, where one of you either feels very uncomfortable or is very turned off, that you guys should be having multiple conversations to get an understanding of what is working, what is good, what is bad, what are boundaries, what are not. That way, during the act of sex, you don't have to be doing so much adjusting and so much conversation just to find a middle ground here, right? These post-game conferences and analysis are so important. Have them whether you're in bed the next morning, have them while you guys are eating breakfast together, have them in the evening when you guys are eating dinner. Talk about the experience, right? This is such an important part of your relationship. If you choose to neglect that and only deal with it when you have to deal with it in the moment, you'll suffer. And I don't want you to suffer. I want you to have pleasure over the moon. I want you to be orgasming like you've never thought possible before. And I want you to be coming so much that you need water bottles on your bedside table just to keep alive.